This is Jeeves and the Feudal Spirit by P.G. Wodehouse, Chapter 3.
It's just occurred to me, thinking back, that in that passage where I gave a brief pen portrait of her, fairly near the start of this narrative, if you remember, I may have made a bloomer and left you with a wrong impression of Florence Cray. Informed that she was an intellectual girl who wrote novels, and was like hammered eggs with the boys with the bulging foreheads out Bloomsbury way, it is possible that you conjured up in your mind's eye the picture of something short and dumpy with ink spots on the chin, as worn by so many of the female intelligentsia. Such is far from being the truth. She is tall and willowy and handsome, with a terrific profile and luxuriant platinum blonde hair, and might, so far as looks are concerned, be the star unit of the harem of one of the better class sultans. I have known strong men to be bowled over by her at first sight, and it is seldom that she takes her walks abroad without being whistled at by visiting Americans. She came breezing in, dressed up to the nines, and Stilton received her with a cold eye on his wristwatch.
"So, there you are at last," he said churlishly. "About time. Dash it! I suppose you had forgotten that Uncle Joe has a nervous breakdown if he's kept waiting for his soup."
I was expecting some haughty response to this crack, for I knew her to be a girl of spirit. But she ignored the rebuke, and I saw that her eyes, which are bright and hazel in colour, were resting on me with a strange light in them. I don't know if you've ever seen a female of what they call teen age gazing raptly at Humphrey Bogart in a cinema, but her deportment was much along those lines. More than a touch of the soul's awakening, if I make my meaning clear. "What she yipped, shaking from stem to stern. "The moustache! It's lovely! Why have you kept this from us all these years? It's wonderful! It gives you such a dashing look! It alters your whole appearance! Well, after the bad press the old fungus had been getting of late, you might have thought that a wave notice like this would have been right up my street. I mean, while one lives for one's art, so to speak, and cares little for the public's praise or blame and all that sort of thing, one can always do with something to paste into one's scrapbook, can one not? But it left me cold, particularly in the vicinity of the feet. I found my eye swivelling round to Stilton, to see how he was taking it, and was concerned to note that he was taking it extremely big. Pique! That's the word I was trying to think of. He was looking definitely piqued, like a diner in a restaurant who has bitten into a bad oyster, and I wasn't sure I altogether blamed him, for his loved one had not only patted my cheek with an affectionate hand, but was winking me in with such wide-eyed admiration that any fiancé witnessing the spectacle might well have been excused for going a bit hot under the collar. And Stilton, of course, as I have already indicated, is a chap who could give Othello a couple of bisques and be dormy one at the 18th. It seemed to me that unless prompt steps were taken through the proper channels, war passions might be unchained, so I hastened to change the subject. "Tell me all about your uncle, Stilton," I said. "Fond of soups, is he? Quite a boy for the bouillon, yes?" He merely gave a grunt like a pig dissatisfied with its ration for the day, so I changed the subject again. How is Spindrift going?" I asked Florence. "Still selling pretty copiously?" I had said the right thing. She beamed. "Yes, it's doing splendidly. It has just gone into another edition. Oh, that's good. You knew it had been made into a play. Eh? Oh, yes, I heard something about that. Do you know Percy Gorringe? I winced a trifle, proposing as I did to expunge the joy from Percy's life by giving him the uncompromising miss in bulk before tomorrow's sun had set. I would have preferred to keep him out of the conversation. I said the name seemed somehow familiar, as if I had heard it somewhere in some connection. He did the dramatisation. He has made a splendid job of it. Here, Stilton, who appeared to be allergic to gorges, snorted in his uncouth way. There are two things I particularly dislike about G. Darcy Cheesewhite. One, his habit of saying, "Ho!" The other, his tendency when moved to make a sound like a buffalo pulling its foot out of a swamp. We have a manager who is going to put it on, and he's got the cast and all that. But there has been an unfortunate hitch. You don't say. Yes. One of the backers has failed us, and we need another £1,000. Still, it's going to be all right. Percy assures me he can raise the money. Again, I winced, and once more Stilton snorted. It is always difficult to weigh snort in the balance, but I think this second one had it over the first in offensiveness by a small margin.
That louse,
he said.
He couldn't raise twopence.
These, of course, were fighting words. Florence's eyes flashed. I won't have you calling Percy a louse. He's a very attractive and clever chap.
Who says so?
I say so.
Ho!
Said Stilton.
Attractive, eh? Who does he attract?
Never mind whom he attracts.
Name 3 people he ever attracted. And clever. He may have just about enough intelligence to open his mouth when he wants to eat, but no more. He's a half-witted gargoyle.
He is not a gargoyle.
Of course he's a gargoyle. Are you going to look me in the face and deny that he wears short side whiskers?
Why shouldn't he wear short side whiskers?
I suppose he has to, being a louse.
Let me tell you.
Oh, come on,
said Stilton brusquely, and hustled her out. As they wended their way, he was reminding her once more of his Uncle Joseph's reluctance to be kept waiting for his soup. It was a pensive Bertram Wooster, with more than a few furrows in his forehead, who returned to his chair and put match to cigarette. And I'll tell you why I was pensive and furrowed. The recent slab of dialogue between the young couple had left me extremely uneasy. Love is a delicate plant that needs constant tending and nurturing, and this cannot be done by snorting at the adored object like a gas explosion and calling her friends lice. I had the disquieting impression that it wouldn't take too much to make the Stilton-Florence axis go again. And who could say that in this event the latter, back in circulation, would not decide to hitch on to me once more? I remembered what had happened that other time, and, as this fellow said, the burned child fears the spilled milk. You see, the trouble with Florence was that though, as I have stated, indubitably comely, and well equipped to take office as a pin-up girl, she was, as I have also stressed, intellectual to the core, and the ordinary sort of bloke like myself does well to give this type of female as wide a miss as he can manage. You know how it is with these earnest, brainy beazles of what is called strong character. They can't let the male soul alone. They want to get behind it and start shoving. Scarcely have they shaken the rice from their hair in the car driving off for the honeymoon than they pull up their socks and begin moulding the partner of joys and sorrows,
and if there is one thing that gives me the pip, it's being moulded. Despite adverse criticism from many quarters, the name of my Aunt Agatha is one that springs to the lips. I like a bee rooster the way he is. Lay off him, I say. Don't try to change him, or you may lose the flavour. Even when we were merely affianced, I recalled this woman had dashed the mystery thriller from my hand, instructing me to read instead a perfectly frightful thing by a bird called Tolstoy. At the thought of what horrors might ensue after the clergyman had done his stuff, and she had a legal right to bring my grey hairs in sorrow to the grave, the imagination boggled. It was a subdued and apprehensive Bertram Wooster who, some moments later, reached for the hat and light overcoat and went to the Savoy to shove food into the trotters. The binge, as I had anticipated, did little or nothing to raise the spirits. Aunt Dahlia had not erred in stating that my guests would prove to be creeps of no common order. L.G. Trotter was a little man with a face like a weasel, who scarcely uttered during the meal because, whenever he tried to, the moon of his delight shut him up. And Mrs. Trotter, a burly heavyweight with a beaked nose, who talked all the time, principally about some woman she disliked called Blenkinsop, and nothing to help me through the grim proceedings except the faint, far-off echo of those specials of Jeeves. It was a profound relief when they finally called it a day, and I was at liberty to totter off to the drones for the restorative I so sorely needed. The almost universal practice of the inmates being to attend some form of musical entertainment after dinner, the smoking room was empty when I arrived, and it would not be too much to say that 5 minutes later, a cigarette between my lips and a brimming flagon at my side, I was enveloped in a deep peace. The strained nerves had relaxed. The snooted soul was at rest. It couldn't last, of course. These lulls in life's battles never do. Came a moment when I had that eerie feeling that I was not alone, and, looking round, found myself gazing at G. Darcy Cheesewright.